The stars looked peaceful tonight, but Zekthor knew better. He stood in the control room of the colony, watching the screens that showed enemy ships surrounding his world. His hands shook as he counted them. 17 large warships. All of them belonged to the Kryn, a violent race that attacked peaceful colonies like his. Zekthor was a Vexian, a species that had never known war. His people came from a safe world where the most dangerous animal was smaller than a human cat. Violence was something they read about in books, not something they understood. They had joined the galaxy's community of peaceful races and felt safe under the protection of bigger, stronger species. But now the Kryn were here. 3 million Vexians lived on this mining colony called Tharsis Prime. All of them were in danger. The Kryn had sent 200,000 soldiers to the ground. They were moving toward the shelters where families hid, scared and helpless. Zekthor looked at the young officer named Rin who worked at the communication station. Her large eyes were wet with tears. She had been sending distress calls for hours, begging anyone in space to help them. "Has anyone answered?" Zekthor asked, though he already knew the answer. "The Palathian fleet says they are 3 weeks away," Rin said quietly. "The Confederation sent their sympathy but no ships. The Draconians want payment before they help. Everyone else is too far away or too scared of the Kryn. 3 weeks. Zekthor felt sick. They had maybe 3 days before the Kryn reached the civilian shelters. He knew what happened to colonies that the Kryn captured. They did not take prisoners to work. They took them for food. The thought made him want to collapse, but he forced himself to stay standing. These people needed him to be strong. He looked at the list of nearby star systems on his screen. Most were empty. Some had species that could not help. Then he saw one name that made his blood go cold. Sol System, the home of humans. Distance was only 4 light years, closer than any friendly world. But humans were forbidden. The galaxy had made strict rules about them. No contact, no communication, no interaction of any kind. They came from a death world, a planet so dangerous that just living there made them into something frightening. The Galactic Council had studied Earth and declared humans too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous to join civilized space. Zekthor had read the reports about Earth. It was a world of extremes. Huge storms that could destroy cities, earthquakes that split the ground, volcanoes that burned everything. And the life that evolved there was just as harsh. Creatures that hunted other creatures, plants that poisoned anything that touched them, diseases that killed in days. Humans had survived all of that. They had learned to hunt, to fight, to kill. They had eyes on the front of their heads like predators. They had hands that could grip weapons. They had minds that thought about violence as naturally as breathing. Every species in the galaxy agreed that humans should stay away from everyone else. But now Zekthor had to make a choice. Follow the rules and watch his people die, or break the most important law in the galaxy and call for help from Deathworlders. "Rin," he said slowly, "send a distress call to the Sol system." The young officer turned to stare at him. "Ambassador, we cannot contact humans. The Council forbids it. They are classified as dangerous. If we break this law, we could face serious punishment." "What punishment could be worse than extinction?" Zekthor asked. "Send the call." "But Ambassador, humans are violent. They might hurt us. They might be worse than the Kryn. What if calling them brings an even bigger disaster?" Zekthor walked over to Rin's station and put one of his 4 hands on her shoulder. "Officer Rin, in 3 days the Kryn will reach our people. Do you know what they will do to them?" Rin's head dropped. Yes, she knew. Everyone knew what the Kryn did to captured populations. It was too horrible to think about. "I would rather take a chance on unknown humans than accept certain death from the Kryn," Zekthor said firmly. "Send the call. Make it clear that we have civilians in danger. Include our coordinates. Tell them we need immediate help." Rin's fingers moved across her console. She typed the message in the basic language that most species used for emergency communication. 3 million civilians. Immediate danger. Requesting aid. Please help. She attached their location and pressed send. The message traveled through space at faster than light speed, carried by communication technology that made distances meaningless. Within minutes, it reached the Sol system. Within minutes, it reached Earth. Zekthor and Rin waited. The control room was silent except for the quiet beeping of machines. Other Vexian officials stood nearby, all of them watching the communication station. Nobody spoke. They all knew what had just happened. They had broken the most sacred rule of galactic civilization. 20 minutes passed. Each minute felt like an hour. Zekthor began to think that maybe the humans would not respond. Maybe they did not care about aliens. Maybe they were too busy with their own problems. Then the communication system made a sound. An incoming message. From Sol System, Rin played the message. It was audio only. A human voice came through, deep and rough but somehow reassuring. The translation computer worked quickly to change the words into something Vexians could understand. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force vessel Valkyrie. We received your distress call. We understand you have civilians in danger. We are coming to help. Our estimated arrival time is 6 hours. Hold on, stay safe. We will be there soon. Morrison out. Silence filled the control room. 6 hours. The fastest ships in the Confederation took days to travel 4 light years. The Palathian fleet needed 3 weeks. But the humans said 6 hours. That is impossible, Rin whispered. No ship can move that fast. The physics do not allow it. Apparently human physics are different, Zekthor said. He felt relief and fear mixing together in his chest. Relief because help was coming. Fear because humans were coming. One of the other officials, an older Vexian named Pelnak, spoke up. Zekthor, what have you done? You have invited Deathworlders to our colony. They might save us from the Kryn, but who will save us from them? Zekthor did not have an answer. He had made his choice. Now they would all live with the consequences. He looked at the screen showing the Kryn ships in orbit and the Kryn soldiers on the ground. Then he looked at the clock counting down. 6 hours until the humans arrived. 3 days until the Kryn reached the shelters. We wait, Zekthor said finally. We wait and we hope that the Deathworlders are not as terrible as the stories say. But deep inside he wondered if he had just traded one nightmare for another. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the Valkyrie. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with calm efficiency. Everyone knew what they were doing. Everyone had trained for situations like this. Morrison looked at the main screen that showed the space ahead of them. Lieutenant Kate Phillips sat at the weapons station. She studied the information coming from their sensors. Captain, I am reading 17 hostile vessels in orbit around the planet. They match the description of Kryn raiders. Ground sensors show approximately 200,000 Kryn soldiers. They have surrounded the civilian areas. Morrison nodded. The situation was exactly as the distress call had described. What about the locals? The Vexians? They are still broadcasting distress calls on all frequencies. They sound frightened, sir. I think they are surprised we actually came. They are not the only ones, said another officer from the navigation station. Captain, Command sent us a message while we were in hyperspace. They reminded us that contact with the Vexians is against Council regulations. They said we might face consequences for this. Morrison smiled slightly. Lieutenant, someone sent an SOS, that is a distress signal. It does not matter what species they are or what rules exist. When someone calls for help, we answer. We will deal with the politics later. Dropping out of hyperspace in 10 seconds, the navigation officer announced. 987, the countdown finished. The Valkyrie slipped out of hyperspace and back into normal space. The transition was smooth, barely noticeable. Morrison appreciated the newer ships. The old ones used to shake so hard your bones rattled. We are in normal space, Phillips reported. The hostile vessels are reacting to our presence. They are turning to face us. I am picking up communication signals between their ships. They seem confused. Can you translate what they are saying? Phillips listened to her equipment for a moment. The computer is working on it, sir. Their language is different from anything in our database, but it sounds like they are demanding to know who we are and what we want. Open a communication channel. All frequencies. Let us introduce ourselves properly. Channel open, Captain. Morrison took a breath and spoke clearly. Attention, Kryn vessels. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. You are currently attacking a civilian population. This is unacceptable. You have one opportunity to withdraw peacefully. Power down your weapons. Move away from the planet. If you do this, we will consider this a misunderstanding. If you do not, we will stop you. The bridge was silent as they waited for a response. It came quickly. The translation computer turned the Kryn language into words Morrison could understand. The tone was aggressive and mocking. Unknown vessel, you have no authority in this system. These resources belong to the Kryn hegemony now. We claim them by right of conquest. Leave immediately or we will destroy you. Morrison sighed. He had hoped they would be reasonable. Well, we tried talking. Mr. Chen, Give me a tactical analysis of their ships. The tactical officer, a young man named Danny Chen, studied his screens. Captain, their technology is very old. They use basic energy shields. Their weapons are mostly ballistic, like bullets and missiles. Their engines use chemical fuel for maneuvering. Honestly, sir, it looks like technology from hundreds of years ago. How old are we talking? Early space age. Maybe equivalent to human technology from the 21st century. Morrison nodded slowly. That explained why the Kryn picked on peaceful species. They could not compete with more advanced civilizations. Lieutenant Phillips, can you disable those vessels without killing anyone? Phillips grinned. Yes, sir. Give me 5 minutes. You have 3. Those civilians do not have time to spare. Understood, Captain. What happened next would become famous in military history. The Valkyrie moved through the Kryn formation like a predator through prey. Her advanced systems locked onto every ship simultaneously. The weapons officer did not fire destructive weapons. Instead, she used electromagnetic pulse technology. Each pulse was carefully calculated. It targeted specific systems on each ship. Weapons went offline. Sensors went dark. Communication systems stopped working. Life support continued functioning. The hull remained intact. The crew was safe but helpless. In 2 minutes and 43 seconds, all 17 Kryn warships became floating metal boxes. Their crews were alive but trapped. Their ships were disabled but not destroyed. Not a single life was lost. Space targets neutralized. Phillips reported. All hostile vessels are disabled. No casualties. Excellent work. Now what about the ground forces? They are attempting to advance on the civilian shelters. They have been given orders to complete their mission despite losing their ships. Morrison stood up from his command chair. Launch the Marines. Rules of engagement are minimal force only. Priority is protecting civilians. Make it very clear to the Kryn that they have 2 choices. Surrender or get knocked unconscious. No killing unless absolutely necessary for self-defense. Yes, sir. Marine deployment beginning now. Morrison watched as deployment pods launched from the bottom of the Valkyrie. They looked like falling stars as they streaked toward the planet's surface. Each pod carried 10 Marines in full combat armor. Each Marine had weapons designed to stop people without killing them. The pods hit the ground near the Kryn positions. Armored figures emerged and moved with incredible speed and precision. The Kryn soldiers had never faced anything like this. Their weapons could not penetrate the human armor. Their tactics were useless against opponents who moved so fast and struck so accurately. Some Kryn tried to fight. They learned quickly that fighting humans was a mistake. The Marines used stunning weapons that knocked people unconscious instantly. They used restraints that were impossible to break. They moved like they could predict what the enemy would do before the enemy knew it themselves. Other Kryn tried to run. The Marines let them go if they dropped their weapons and retreated. The goal was not to punish. The goal was to protect the civilians. Some Kryn chose to surrender immediately. These were treated with respect. They were restrained safely and given water. Nobody hurt them. Nobody mocked them. The Marines were professional. 20 minutes after the Marines landed, the battle was over. 200,000 Kryn soldiers were either unconscious, restrained, or running away. Not a single Kryn had been killed. Not a single civilian had been harmed. Down in the Vexian Control Center, Ambassador Zekthor watched everything on the screens. He had expected violence. He had expected death. He had expected the humans to act like the monsters from the stories. Instead, he watched precision. He watched restraint. He watched professionals doing their job with minimal force. The humans could have killed everyone. They chose not to. His communication device made a sound. A human voice spoke using the basic galactic language. The voice was female and spoke slowly so he could understand. Ambassador Zekthor, this is Staff Sergeant Amy Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force Marines. The immediate threat has been eliminated. Your people are safe now. Captain Morrison would like to meet with you to discuss what happens next. Are you available? Zekthor looked at Officer Rin. She looked back at him with an expression of complete shock. Her mouth was open. Her eyes were wide. They saved us, Rin whispered. The Deathworlders actually saved us. They did more than save us, Zekthor replied quietly. He looked at the tactical display showing the disabled Kryn ships floating harmlessly in orbit. They saved us without killing anyone. They showed mercy. The galaxy told us humans were monsters. The galaxy was wrong. The meeting room in the colonial government building had been prepared quickly. Vexian officials stood nervously near the door. They wore their best formal clothes. Everyone tried to look calm, but Zekthor could see the fear in their eyes. Governor Pelnak, the oldest Vexian on the colony, spoke quietly to Zekthor. "Are you certain this is safe? They are predators. Maybe we should conduct this meeting through video communication instead of face-to-face." "They just saved 3 million of our people," Zekthor reminded him gently. "The least we can do is meet them properly. Besides, running away might offend them. I do not think we want to offend people who can disable 17 warships in under 3 minutes." The door opened. Captain Morrison entered with Staff Sergeant Rodriguez. Zekthor had studied the limited information about human appearance, but seeing them in person was different. They walked on 2 legs like some species, but everything about them suggested danger. Their eyes faced forward, positioned for hunting. Their bodies were compact and muscular. Even standing still, they looked ready to move instantly, but Captain Morrison was smiling. Zekthor had learned that humans smiled to show friendliness, even though it meant showing their teeth. "Ambassador Zekthor," Morrison said, holding out his hand. "It is an honor to meet you." Zekthor recognized the gesture from his research. The handshake was an ancient human greeting. He extended one of his forearms and carefully took Morrison's hand. The human's grip was strong but controlled, not threatening. "Captain Morrison, on behalf of all Vexians, I thank you. You and your crew saved us from a terrible fate. We owe you our lives." Morrison nodded. "We are happy we could help. I know this is against your council's rules about contact with us. I hope we did not cause political problems for you." "Any political problems are better than being dead," Zekthor replied. "Please sit down. We have much to discuss." They sat around a conference table built for Vexian size. Morrison and Rodriguez looked a bit awkward in the small chairs, but they adapted without complaining. Zekthor appreciated their flexibility. "Captain, I must ask you something," Zekthor began. "The Galactic Council has forbidden contact with Earth. They say humans are dangerous and violent. They say you are unpredictable and should be avoided. But you came here and defeated a much larger force without killing anyone. You showed restraint and mercy that contradicts everything we were told. Why?" Morrison looked at Rodriguez before answering. They seemed to have a silent conversation with just their eyes. Then Morrison spoke. "Ambassador, I will be honest with you. Humans can be violent. Our history has many wars and conflicts. Terrible things happened in our past. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day. We had to learn to fight and survive and compete with dangerous creatures. But we also learned something else along the way." He leaned forward. His expression became serious. "We learned that the strongest groups were not the most violent ones. They were the groups who protected each other, who worked together, who helped the weak. We learned that cooperation was more important than competition. Violence was sometimes necessary, but it was not the answer to everything." Zekthor listened carefully. This was not what he expected. Morrison continued. "Yes, we are predators. Yes, we come from a death world. But that is exactly why we understand how valuable life is. We have seen too much death. We have lost too many people. When someone sends a distress signal, we respond. Not because we want power or control, but because we remember what it feels like to need help and have nobody come." Something clicked in Zekthor's mind. The council had focused only on human capacity for violence. They had missed the context completely. They saw the weapon but ignored the hand holding it. "What will happen to the Kryn?" Zekthor asked. "We have them in a secure detention facility. Nobody has been hurt. We gave them food, water, and medical treatment. When the proper authorities arrive, we will hand them over to face justice for their crimes. You treat prisoners well." Rodriguez spoke for the first time. "They are still people, Ambassador. Bad people who are going to do terrible things, yes, but they are still living beings. We have rules about how to treat prisoners. We follow those rules even when it would be easier not to." "Even when nobody is watching?" Zekthor asked. "Especially then," Morrison said firmly. "That is what separates civilization from chaos, Ambassador. It is not about whether you can be violent. It is about whether you choose to control that violence. Anyone can destroy. Building and protecting takes real strength." Governor Pelnak had been quiet until now. He finally spoke up. "Captain Morrison, what does Earth want in return for this rescue? We are a small colony. We have some resources, but nothing valuable enough to justify the risk you took by breaking the Council's contact ban." Morrison smiled again. "Governor, we do not want anything. You sent a distress call. We answered it. That is all. Pelnak's voice filled with disbelief. Nothing. You traveled 4 light years. You risked your ship and crew. You violated galactic law. And you want nothing in return? Morrison shrugged. Well, if you are offering, those crystal sculptures in your capital city are beautiful. I would not mind having one, but that is just personal interest. Not official business. Zekthor felt himself relax for the first time in days. These fearsome Deathworlders had come to their rescue expecting nothing. They had fought with precision and care. They had treated enemies with dignity, and now they were interested in art. The galaxy's understanding of humans was completely wrong. Captain Morrison, Zekthor said carefully, I believe the Galactic Council has made a serious mistake about your people. I am going to write a full report about what happened here. The truth needs to be known. I appreciate that, Ambassador, but I should warn you. The truth might be harder to accept than the lie. It is easier to fear the unknown monster than to accept that maybe the monster is just someone different from you. Fear is comfortable. Understanding takes work. Zekthor thought about those words. Morrison was right. The galaxy had chosen fear because it was easier, but fear had nearly cost 3 million lives. Perhaps you are right, Zekthor agreed. But after today, I would rather stand with the monster than hide from it. You have proven that humans are not what we thought. You are not mindless destroyers. You are protectors. Morrison stood up, signaling the meeting was ending. Ambassador, we are just people doing what we think is right. Nothing more complicated than that. But Zekthor knew it was more complicated. These humans had capabilities that terrified the galaxy. Technology that could cross 4 light years in 6 hours. Weapons that could disable warships in minutes. Warriors who could defeat armies without taking lives. And they used all that power with restraint and mercy. That combination made them more than protectors. It made them something the galaxy desperately needed. Heroes. The Galactic Council chamber was enormous. 300 species had representatives there. The room was filled with noise as everyone tried to talk at once. Translation systems struggled to keep up with all the different languages. Ambassador Zekthor stood in the center with Governor Pelnak and Officer Rin beside him. Council Speaker Dalanth was a Draxian elder. His species had controlled the council for 100 years. He made a deep sound that the room's speakers amplified. Everyone became quiet. Ambassador Zekthor. Dalanth's voice was cold and formal. You stand here accused of breaking our most important law. You contacted a quarantined species. You invited Deathworlders into civilized space. Explain yourself. Zekthor had prepared for this moment. He had written his report carefully, knowing this would be his only chance to change thousands of years of prejudice and fear. Honored Speaker, respected council members, I stand before you not as a criminal but as a survivor. 3 million Vexians are alive today because I broke a law that was based on fear instead of facts. Voices rose across the chamber. Dalanth's body language showed irritation. You dare question the wisdom of this council? I question a policy that would have killed 3 million civilians rather than allow contact with potential rescuers. Zekthor replied firmly. The humans answered our call in 6 hours. 6 hours. Your closest allies were 3 weeks away. In that time, the Kryn would have harvested every Vexian on Tharsis Prime. A representative from Palathea stood up. Its crystalline body reflected light in rainbow colors. We had ships coming. The proper procedures were being followed. Proper procedures that would have arrived to find only corpses, Zekthor said sharply. With respect, your fleet's timing is not my concern. My concern is keeping my people alive. Dalanth raised a hand for silence. Let us move past the response time issue. You summoned Deathworlders, humans, a species known for violence and unpredictability. What destruction did they cause to the Kryn? Zekthor felt satisfied as he activated the video recordings on the chamber's main screens. The council watched in silence as the Valkyries' precise strikes disabled the Kryn fleet. They watched human marines deploy with perfect efficiency, and they watched with visible shock as not one single Kryn died. 0 casualties, Zekthor stated clearly. The humans neutralized 200,000 Kryn soldiers and disabled 17 warships without killing anyone. They gave medical treatment to wounded Kryn. They treated prisoners according to their own code of honor. They asked for nothing in return. The silence in the huge chamber was complete. Finally, a representative from Kular spoke. Its musical voice sounded confused. This does not match our information. Humans are classified as extremely aggressive. Their world is full of predation and violence. How could they show such restraint? Officer Rin stepped forward. Her voice was steady despite speaking to such a large audience. I can answer that question, honored representative. I have studied human databases extensively since our encounter. Yes, Earth is a death world by our standards. Yes, humans are predators, but that classification has blinded us to an important truth. She showed images of Earth on her display, pictures that had been included in humanity's first contact package decades ago, when they tried to join the galaxy. Humans did not just survive their world through violence. They survived through cooperation. They formed tribes and communities and nations. They domesticated other species not just for food, but for friendship. They created art and music and literature. They developed complex moral systems specifically to control their violent tendencies. More images appeared. Human doctors treating sick people, firefighters running into burning buildings, soldiers carrying wounded enemies to safety, ordinary people forming chains to rescue strangers from floods. They can be violent, yes, but they can also sacrifice everything for others. Their history is full of individuals who gave their lives to save people from different tribes, different nations, even different species. They have a concept called heroism that celebrates this behavior. Dalenth's sensory organs extended fully, showing he was thinking deeply. You suggest we have completely misunderstood humans. I suggest we saw only what we feared, Zekthor said. We looked at their capacity for violence and stopped there. We never considered what else that harsh world taught. Them compassion, resilience, them understanding that survival sometimes means protecting others, at your own expense. A representative from Zenthar spoke with the wisdom of a species that lived for centuries. If what you say is true, Ambassador, then we have made a terrible mistake. We have isolated a species that could have been our greatest ally. The question now is, what do we do about it? Zekthor took a deep breath. This was the crucial moment. I propose we end the quarantine immediately, open formal diplomatic relations with Earth. Allow humanity to join the civilized species of the galaxy, not as subordinates or subjects, but as equals. The chamber exploded with discussion. Some representatives argued strongly against the proposal. Others, especially those whose species had suffered from Kryn raids, were more open to the idea. The debate continued for hours. Arguments were made on both sides. Some pointed out the dangers. What if humans became aggressive? What if they used their advanced technology to dominate others? What if the stories were true and restraint was just a temporary mask? Others argued the opposite. What if humans could help protect weak species? What if their technology could solve problems that seemed impossible? What if they were exactly what the galaxy needed to stop raiders and pirates? Several representatives mentioned that humans had already proven themselves. They had responded to a distress call from strangers. They had fought with precision and mercy. They had treated enemies well. What more proof did the council need? Finally, after 5 hours of debate, Dalenth called for a vote. The chamber became silent. Every representative activated their voting device. The results would be displayed for everyone to see. The numbers appeared on the main screen. The vote was not unanimous. Many species still feared humans, but the majority saw the truth. By a margin of 63%, the Galactic Council voted to end humanity's quarantine. An official invitation would be extended to Earth to join the galactic community. Zekthor felt relief wash over him. He had succeeded. Humanity would no longer be isolated. As they left the chamber, Governor Pelnak put a hand on Zekthor's shoulder. You have changed the galaxy today, Ambassador. Whether that change is good or bad, we will discover in time. Zekthor looked back at the council chamber. Then he looked up at a viewing window where he could see Earth's sun. It was just a small yellow star among billions of stars in the galaxy. I believe it will be good, Zekthor said quietly. We called for Deathworlders and they sent us heroes. Perhaps it is time we stopped fearing the darkness and learned to appreciate what light it can create. Officer Rin stood beside them.
What happens now, Ambassador?
Now we wait to see what humans do when they are welcomed instead of feared, Zekthor replied. I suspect we will be surprised. Again. The 3 Vexians walked through the station toward their ship. Around them, representatives from hundreds of species discussed the vote. Some were angry. Some were excited. Some were scared. But everyone was talking about humans. The galaxy had just opened its doors to Deathworlders. Nothing would ever be the same again. 6 months had passed since the incident at Tharsis Prime. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of Earth's newest space station. He looked out at an unusual sight. Dozens of ships from species he had only read about filled the space around Earth. The Galactic Council's invitation had opened the floodgates. Quite a view, is it not? Ambassador Zekthor's voice came from behind. The Vexian had become a frequent visitor to Earth. He served as humanity's primary contact with the wider galaxy. Still getting used to it, Morrison admitted. 6 months ago we thought we were alone in the universe. Now we have 300 species wanting to talk to us. Not all of them are friendly, Zekthor noted. The Draconians are still suspicious. The Confederation has concerns about your military technology. There are species who believe the quarantine should never have been lifted. What do you believe, Ambassador? Zekthor moved closer to the window. His large eyes reflected the lights of the ships outside. I believe that fear makes us small, Captain. The galaxy has been small for a very long time. We have existed in comfortable stagnation, avoiding conflict by avoiding challenge. We achieved peace, but perhaps we paid too high a price. We stopped growing. You think we will change that? I think you already have. Do you know what happened after word spread about Tharsis Prime? 7 colonies that were threatened by Kryn raids sent requests for human assistance. Not to the Galactic Council. Not to their own governments. To you, Morrison nodded. I know. Command has been overwhelmed with requests. We are setting up a rapid response force and training more crews. Everyone wants to know how we disabled those ships. And what do you tell them? The truth. We are just people who happen to come from a tough neighborhood. Violence is a tool, not an identity. Strength without compassion is just brutality. Those are the lessons we learned the hard way. A sound announced someone entering. Lieutenant Kate Phillips came onto the observation deck. Captain, we just received word from command. The Kryn hegemony has requested peace negotiations. They want to discuss stopping their raids in exchange for trade agreements and diplomatic recognition. Morrison raised his eyebrows in surprise. The Kryn want to talk? The species that has been raiding frontier worlds for decades suddenly wants peace? After Tharsis Prime, they realize they cannot win military confrontations anymore. Not with humans protecting potential targets, Phillips explained. Apparently, they would rather negotiate than risk another encounter like the one with the Valkyrie. Zekthor made a sound that Morrison had learned was Vexian laughter. Do you see, Captain? You have changed the strategic situation of an entire region of space. The Kryn operated freely because no one could stop them without massive casualties. You stopped them with 0 casualties. You made violence obsolete as a strategy. Not obsolete, Morrison corrected gently. Just not the first option anymore. There is a difference. An important difference, Zekthor agreed. Phillips cleared her throat. There is something else, Captain. Earth has been invited to send representatives to the Galactic Council. Not as observers, as full members with voting rights. Morrison looked at Zekthor. Did you have something to do with this? I may have written several additional reports, Zekthor admitted. But the decision was not mine alone. The Council sees value in having humanity at the table. Your perspective, your experience, your ability to solve problems that the rest of us cannot handle. Or they want to keep us close so they can watch us, Morrison said with a slight smile. Perhaps both, Zekthor said honestly. Trust must be earned, Captain. You have made a good start, but the galaxy is large and memories are long. There will be challenges ahead. Species who see you as a threat, situations that will test your principles, moments when violence seems like the easy path. Morrison turned away from the window to face his friend fully. Ambassador, humanity spent thousands of years learning one basic lesson. We are all stronger together. We made terrible mistakes along the way. We fought wars and committed terrible acts. We failed in countless ways. But we learned, we grew, we became better. He gestured to the ships outside the station. Now we have a chance to apply those lessons on a galactic scale. To show that Deathworlders can be more than just survivors. We can be protectors, builders, friends. Zekthor's body language showed contentment. You know, Captain, when I sent that distress call, I was terrified. I thought I was summoning monsters out of desperation. Instead, I found something I never expected. What is that? Hope. You gave us hope, Captain Morrison. Not just the Vexians, but countless species who now know they do not have to accept injustice. That someone will answer the call for help. That assistance exists even from the most unexpected sources. Morrison smiled warmly. We are just doing what anyone should do, Ambassador. Answering a distress signal. Perhaps, Zekthor said softly. But in a galaxy that has forgotten how to be brave, sometimes doing what anyone should do makes you extraordinary. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching as more ships arrived. Trade vessels bringing goods from distant worlds, diplomatic couriers carrying messages between governments, scientific expeditions seeking to learn about Earth. It was the beginning of something entirely new. Later that day, Morrison received official orders. The Valkyrie was being assigned to lead the newly formed Galactic Response Fleet. This was a joint initiative between Earth and the Council. 20 ships from 10 different species, united under a single purpose: to answer distress calls, to protect the vulnerable, to prove that the galaxy could be better than it had been. Staff Sergeant Amy Rodriguez was promoted to commander and given her own ship. Lieutenant Kate Phillips became the fleet's chief tactical officer. Ambassador Zekthor accepted the position of humanity's official representative to the Galactic Council as Morrison stood on the bridge of the Valkyrie preparing for their first official mission with the response fleet. He thought about how much had changed. Earth was no longer isolated. Humanity was no longer feared by everyone. They had proven themselves. The crew worked around him with practiced efficiency. These were good people, trained professionals who understood the responsibility they carried. They represented not just Earth, but the idea that strength could be paired with mercy, that power could be controlled, that Deathworlders could choose to protect life. "Captain," Phillips called from her station, "we are receiving our first mission assignment. A mining colony on the frontier is reporting suspicious vessel activity. They are requesting our presence as a deterrent." Morrison settled into his command chair. "Set course. Best speed. Let us show them what the response fleet can do." The Valkyrie's engines hummed to life. The ship turned gracefully and accelerated toward hyperspace. Behind them, the other ships of the response fleet followed in perfect formation. Across the galaxy, on worlds where fear had ruled and hope had died, people looked up at the stars. They knew that if they called for help, someone would come. Someone who had learned that true strength was not about the ability to destroy. It was about the wisdom to protect. The humans had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. 1 year after first contact, Ambassador Zekthor walked through the halls of the Galactic Council building on Prime Station. The place felt different now. There was energy in the air that had not existed before. Species that had barely spoken to each other for centuries were now working together on joint projects. All because humans had shown them a different way. He passed a conference room where a mixed group was meeting. Draconians, Palathians, and humans sat together discussing trade routes. A year ago, such a meeting would have been impossible. The Draconians did not trust anyone. Now they trusted humans enough to work with species that humans vouched for. Zekthor arrived at his office and found Captain Morrison waiting. The human had been promoted to admiral and now commanded the entire Galactic Response Fleet, but he still wore his uniform with the same humble confidence. "Admiral Morrison," Zekthor greeted him warmly. "To what do I owe this visit?" "I wanted to show you something," Morrison replied. He activated a holographic display. Numbers and statistics filled the air between them. "These are the response fleet's results from the past year." Zekthor studied the data. 43 distress calls answered, 17 colonies protected from raiders, 8 humanitarian missions to worlds hit by natural disasters, 2 peace negotiations between hostile species, and the most impressive number of all, 0 casualties on either side in any conflict. "These numbers are remarkable," Zekthor said, "but you did not come here just to show me statistics." Morrison smiled. "You know me too well, Ambassador. I came to tell you about something that happened last week, something that shows how much things have changed." He changed the display to show a star system Zekthor did not recognize. "This is the Kryn home system. Last week they suffered a massive earthquake that destroyed their primary food production facility. Millions of Kryn were facing starvation. The species that has raided so many colonies? The same. They sent out a distress call. Not to their allies because they have none. Not to their victims because they expected no mercy. They sent it to us. To the response fleet." Zekthor felt his respiratory slits widen in surprise. "And you went?" "Of course we went. They sent an SOS. We answer all distress calls, remember? We brought food supplies, temporary shelter systems, and engineering teams to help rebuild." The Kryn government was shocked. They could not understand why we would help them after everything they had done. "What did you tell them?" "I told them that everyone deserves help when they are in trouble. Past actions do not change present need. If they want redemption, The path starts with accepting assistance and learning from it. Morrison showed another image. Kryn workers and human engineers working side by side to rebuild structures. Something interesting happened. After we arrived, 7 other species sent aid ships. Species the Kryn had raided. They said if humans could forgive, so could they. Zekthor felt emotion building in his chest. This was what he had hoped for when he wrote his reports to the Council. Not just acceptance of humans, but transformation of the entire galactic culture. You have taught us mercy, Admiral. We taught you that mercy is strength, not weakness, Morrison corrected. You already had the capacity for it. You just needed to see it demonstrated. A message came through on Zekthor's communication device. He read it and felt surprise. The Kryn government has just submitted an official application to join the Galactic Council. They want to become a legitimate member of civilized space. Will the Council accept them? After what you did? How can we refuse? You showed that even raiders can change, that no species is beyond redemption. The Council will debate it, but I think they will vote yes. Morrison stood up and walked to the window. Outside, ships from dozens of species moved through space in organized patterns. Trade, diplomacy, cooperation. Ambassador, when we first met, you were terrified of us. You thought you had summoned monsters. I did think that, Zekthor admitted, and now I think you are the best thing that ever happened to the galaxy. You forced us to confront our fears. You showed us that different does not mean dangerous. You proved that strength and compassion can exist together. Zekthor joined Morrison at the window. There is something I need to tell you. Something I have been researching. The Council's decision to quarantine Earth was not based solely on fear of human violence. What do you mean? I found old records. Thousands of years ago, there were other Deathworld species. They tried to join the galactic community. Some became aggressive and had to be stopped. Others died out because they could not adapt to peaceful civilization. The Council became afraid that all Deathworld species would follow the same pattern. Morrison was quiet for a moment, so they judged us based on others' failures. Yes, but you proved them wrong. You showed that Deathworld origin does not determine destiny. Humans chose to be different. You took the hardships that made you strong and used that strength to protect others. We are not special, Ambassador. We are just doing what seems right. That is exactly what makes you special, Zekthor replied. You have incredible power and you use it for good without expecting praise or reward. You answer distress calls from strangers. You help former enemies. You treat prisoners with dignity. These actions are not common in the galaxy. They are exceptional. A signal chimed. Morrison checked his device. That is my ship. We have another mission. A colony reporting strange energy readings. Probably nothing dangerous, but they are worried. You will go immediately. Of course. Someone is worried. That is enough reason. Zekthor walked Morrison to the door. Before the human left, Zekthor spoke again. Admiral, I have been thinking about that day when I sent the distress call. I was so afraid of what might happen. I thought I might be making the biggest mistake of my life. And now I know it was the best decision I ever made. Not just for the Vexians, but for the entire galaxy. You humans have given us something we did not even know we were missing. What is that? Heroes, real heroes. Not the kind from ancient stories, but living people who choose to do good things even when it is difficult. You have reminded us what courage looks like, what honor means, what it means to stand up for others. Morrison clasped Zekthor's hand in a firm handshake. We are just answering distress calls, Ambassador. But if that makes us heroes in your eyes, then I am honored. Just do not expect us to change. We will keep answering those calls. We will keep helping where we can. That is who we are. I know. And that is exactly why the galaxy needs you. Morrison left and Zekthor returned to his window. He watched the response fleet ships prepare to depart. Sleek vessels from Earth flying alongside ships from Palathia, Zenthar, Kular, and now even a few from Kryn. All of them united under one purpose. All of them inspired by human example. The galaxy had been afraid of Deathworlders. They had imagined monsters and destroyers. What they got instead were protectors and teachers. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy through force. They had won hearts and minds through compassion and courage. Zekthor thought about his original distress call. A desperate message sent in fear to forbidden Deathworlders. That call had changed everything. It had opened the galaxy to new possibilities. It had shown that sometimes the help you need comes from the most unexpected places. The response fleet jumped to hyperspace, disappearing in flashes of light. Somewhere in the galaxy, someone needed help, and the Deathworlders were on their way, not to conquer or dominate, but to answer the call, to protect the weak, to show mercy to the fallen. To prove that strength and kindness could exist together, the galaxy had summoned Deathworlders. And the universe had been blessed with heroes,